You're about to watch episode 0 of Night City Underground, which is a show where myself and Alex will be talking about Cyberpunk 2077. Now, the goal is that this will be a recurring show, but for this first episode, I wanted to begin things with this kind of opening statement and caveat, which is this show is a work in progress. You're going to see the graphics are a bit rushed and the audio levels were off, and my own life has made making content very difficult as of late. But I wanted to do something for Cyberpunk, and I wanted to do something to get back into the rhythm of making content. So we ripped the band-aid off. We had some technical issues. We're going to work through it, but because this is going to be a recurring show, our goal is to make this better each and every week going forward. So please just bear with us. And if you've made it through this far, enjoy the show. This is episode 0, as we're calling it, because it's pre-launch of the game, and there will be more to come. Thank you. Welcome to the inaugural episode of Night City Underground. My name is Derek, but I make content under the name Charmer, and I'm joined by Alex, aka Lazergician, and we are excited to be talking about things related to Cyberpunk. This episode's going to be before the launch of the game, so we're going to be talking about what gets us excited. And with that, let's go ahead and let Alex introduce himself so you can get to know us a little bit better.
Yeah, I'm Alex. I like things that are cyberpunk and techie and futuristic. So I guess this is kind of the game for me, right?
I hope so.
Yeah, right. So I'm sure, at least for episode 1, most of you know who I am. Card game guy, fighting game guy. One of the things I haven't really gotten to flex a lot in my content creation is I've been playing RPGs since I was, yay tall. I usually played a lot of fantasy stuff because that's what was available. Fallout was, I think, the first game I ever truly fell in love with. Fallout 3 when I was maybe 12 or 13. And Cyberpunk is an aesthetic that I absolutely adore. Most recent stuff that I've been doing with it, yeah.
I forget how young you are at times. 12 or 13 when Fallout 3 came out.
It's the beard. It's the beard, right?
Yeah, it is. It hurts. Gosh. Well, and I'm hiding my grays pretty well, but
yeah, you are.
I'm in a similar boat. I'm really excited for the cyberpunk genre, and we'll talk about why in a little bit, but specifically as far as what I've done before. I am mostly known for card games, but I do a little bit of everything. This summer I was casting some Valorant, and I've definitely played a vast number of RPGs. So this is right up my alley, and I have really been diving into just first-person games, storytelling games over the last couple of months. And part of it has just been kind of in preparation for this. I wanted to get back into that feel of going through an adventure. And I'm super excited for Cyberpunk for a number of reasons. I've been excited since it was announced, but that is actually kind of our first topic. So we've got a couple of things we're going to talk about, but since we're filming this ahead of the release, I want to ask you, Laser, what is it specifically about Cyberpunk 2077 that has you excited? Is it the genre? Is it CD Projekt Red and their reputation? Is it something else? Why are you excited about this particular game?
So there's a lot of things. I could go on for an hour just on this one topic, but
you have
if I was going to pick
minutes.
I was going to pick like one or two. Okay, first of all, I haven't seen a Cyberpunk game this ambitious before. I played a lot of them. I think the Shadowrun games are fantastic. I also played the Shadowrun tabletop role-playing game for about a year, and that's a ton of fun. It was a very faithful translation onto computer games, but it didn't have that expansive immersion kind of feel that you get with, Bethesda games and other things like that and CD Projekt Red games that I've played before too. And those games that you can just sink hundreds of hours into and go and go and go and always find new things are super rewarding. You always get to have that sense of novelty and to a certain extent, sense of wonder, right? There's always more to see, always more to do. And at least to my knowledge, there hasn't been a game like that within the cyberpunk space. And all of the other aesthetics and genres that I really care about have kind of gotten that sort of feeling, at least to a certain degree. And Cyberpunk is one that's been really missing for me. So this game is a big hole that's being filled, and that's really exciting for me.
So here's the thing. For me, it's two things. First, for me, it's the genre. Cyberpunk is a genre is something that really excites me, specifically because it allows you to potentially really take that look at what makes somebody who they are, what makes them human. Specifically, when you're talking about cyberpunk, most often or not, you're really touching on transhuman topics. The idea of, what happens if I get cybernetic implants? What happens if I put my consciousness into a machine, right? Other games that I've played that I thoroughly enjoy that are kind of in that vein are games like Soma, for example, which is a bit of a horror game, but it takes that same concept of, what does it mean to be human? And more importantly, like, what does it mean to be me if you start copying me? Similarly, as far as like that kind of cyberpunk feel, you get that same sense of, challenging your sense of self and your sense of humanity from films like Blade Runner. Obviously, the show Altered Carbon hits that really hard as well. And while I don't necessarily think that's going to be all of what this game is about, it's going to have its action elements. It's going to have a lot of different ways that you can express yourself and play the game likely the way that you want to play it. That's what really has me excited. Anytime that I can kind of take humanity or even just consciousness and kind of apply the Theseus paradox to it, I get really excited. So if you're not familiar with the Theseus paradox, it's the idea of if you have a ship and over time you replace the parts of the ship, you give it a new mast, you give it a new hull, et cetera, et cetera. At some point, if you've replaced all of the parts, is it still the same ship? And then you take that and it's like that, but with humanity, right? If I replace all my parts, if I move my consciousness, if I clone myself, or if I clone my consciousness, are we just a collection of our own experiences? All that stuff fascinates me. And the second part that has me really excited for this game is the kind of urban exploration, because with the exception of like maybe some Grand Theft Auto games, and they do it pretty well in a modern setting, there's not really been a game that gives me that sense of wonder when it comes to exploration in the urban setting. So this is,
and you know what that it is for me with this game in specific about that is the devs have stated that they want to specifically include vertical exploration.
Yes.
I think that's something that's been deeply missing. A lot of games give you that sense of exploration and newness and wonder on a very two-dimensional plane, right? You got your Grand Theft Autos, you got your Skyrims, you got your Fallouts. All of those give you huge worlds. But what if you had like 4 of them stacked on top of each other?
Yeah, there's a bunch of that. I love the way, and we'll kind of talk about this in a little bit, but I love the way they have mentioned the different districts of the city have their own identity the same way you would in a true kind of like urban situation. But
it feels organic.
So I know this is polar opposite. This is going way into the other spectrum. But the game I've been most addicted to for probably the last month or so is actually Genshin Impact. Not at all like Cyberpunk. But
I'm curious where this is going
with it is that sense of wonder. When you are exploring in Genshin Impact, you come to a new area and you just look into the distance and you're like, there's ruins over there. I bet there's something cool there. There's a mountain in front of you and you're like, I'm going to go to that top of the mountain and there's going to be something there. And sure enough, there is. But it gives you that kind of like sense of wonder, and it makes you want to just go find everything in the nook and cranny of the map. And completely different game style, completely different setting. But I fell in love with it because I just felt like I could wander anywhere. And I'm looking for that experience, but in an urban, futuristic, sci-fi setting. And I think hopefully that this game will live up to my expectations. It's possible that it doesn't, right? We haven't played it yet, but that's what I'm looking forward to. Again, the idea of analyzing what it means to be a person and who you are, and then also just getting lost in a city. One of my favorite things to do, you and I have both cast esports. We've kind of traveled across the country, traveled, across the continent, across the globe in some instances. One of my favorite things to do is to just get lost in a foreign city. And I'm looking forward to doing that in the year 2077. I'm probably... When I played The Witcher 3, I got so lost in side quests that it took me a long time to remember even what the main story mission was. And I'm going to be guilty of that again for sure. And,
I had before this whole COVID situation started, my girlfriend and I had a trip planned to Copenhagen. And I love exactly what you were saying, that feeling of getting to wander, getting lost, getting a feel for a place kind of from the inside out, right? You got feet on the ground, you got eyes on new sites, you can kind of wander and see whatever you want. to a certain extent, Night City is almost my surrogate Copenhagen this year, right? I didn't get to take that trip, and that's fine. That was the right call. Canceling it, totally fine. I get it. Man, I got some wanderlust going on. And if I could get like, it's not going to be the same, obviously, but if I can get a fraction of that feeling sitting here in this couch, in this chair rather, that would be sweet.
So, speaking of Witcher 3, right? One of the things that I wanted to talk about, kind of as a second topic, if you will, is expectations for the game. So, do you, and I know I'm doing the play on words thing here, some people will groan, but it's the dad in me, right? Do you expect this to be Cyber Witcher, or do you expect it to be Grand Theft Cyber, or do you expect it to be something else entirely? It's entirely possible that we get a mix of that, or maybe they just do something truly revolutionary. But when it comes to your open world exploration, what are your expectations for the game itself?
So I've been trying pretty hard to temper my expectations and go in with kind of as few preconceptions as I can. So that makes this a little hard to answer for me. But if I were a betting man, I would probably put it a little closer to Grand Theft Cyber. I think that sort of format where you have an area to explore and things going on around you, which you do in Cyber Witcher also, but specifically, the thing that tips it off for me was the Night City Wire, where they talked about all of the manners of transportation, all of the different cars, all of the motorcycles, all of the buses. That feels very Grand Thefty to me. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but I also expect it to go a little past that too, right? If it was just that level of exploration, that would still be good. I'd still be very happy with it. But given what we've seen so far, I feel like it's relatively reasonable to expect it to be a kind of souped up from there, right? We've already talked about how there's kind of a promise of verticality to Night City, which I think is super, super interesting. But I think for me, the thing that's missing from the Grand Thefty type games is environmental storytelling. That's one of the things that I was most excited about hearing from the Night City Wires, is that they put in effort to make sure that the environment tells as much of the story as the characters in those environments. Things like, I'm making things up here, but seeing burnt brain dream apparatuses, I don't know how they're administered, but if you like see a whole bunch of, they call them beetles in Shadowrun, sitting over in the corner, then you know that there's maybe an addict who lives here, that there's maybe a den of people who get together to all trip out on someone's memories together periodically. And I think that that is the thing that I don't know how to quantify what type of game that fits into. But I think if I were to say the type of exploration I'm expecting, I would say it's Grand Theft Auto stacked on top of itself a few times with a whole bunch of environmental flavor kind of strewn in there to give it some texture, right? Give it some color, because one of the things that I always find lacking in the Grand Theft games is they feel really gamey, right? It feels like a video game character in a video game world. It doesn't feel organic. It doesn't feel engrossing. It feels gamified. And while I think there's going to be a lot of things that are similar to Grand Theft Auto, and so that's why I lean a little more toward that than Cyber Witcher, it feels disingenuous to say that it's just going to be that. What do you think?
I actually don't know. I think this is
Yeah.
potentially one of my biggest concerns, and it's one of the reasons that I wanted to ask it as a question, is that I want the city to feel more alive than the Grand Theft Auto cities do. Much like you said, it at times feels like you're that video game character in a video game city. Another example I'll give you for comparison is like Spider-Man. I love the Spider-Man PlayStation games. I love Miles Morales, great addition to the franchise. But it's kind of that same thing. One of the reasons that game gets away with it is you spend so much time above the city on your webs swinging around that you don't really need to put that emphasis there. But if you ever just go street level and you just walk around as Spider-Man, it just feels very gamey. And when you play The Witcher, it doesn't feel as much, because you can tell that they took care to make all of those little interactions feel unique and feel like actual characters. And I'm hoping that it's a lot more of that, but we're talking about a drastically different scale. And so that's where I think the concern is. And I think it's a valid concern just because there's a big difference between, you know, your country town in The Witcher where you need to have, you know, 5 meaningful reactions and interactions with whatever you want to say, like NPCs, and make that be believable versus, you know, being on the streets of a busy industrial, you know, corporation district, whatever. Like, it has to feel real. And so I don't know. I am looking forward to more world building stuff. One of my favorite things that I've seen so far from the stuff they've revealed is the fake commercials.
Oh, I love those. They're so good.
There's a website, if you haven't been to it yet, you can go to
It's wild.
nightcity.love. And I'll try to put a link to it in the video description for this, but it is fantastic. It's got like fake pop-up ads, and it gives you information about the city, and there's like a body count that resets daily for like the number of murders in the city.
X days since last injury.
It's fantastic. And so I'm really looking forward to those. And I love that aspect. That's one of those things, again, that I think it's one of those little things that goes a long way into making the world feel a bit more real. Like, my favorite thing from RoboCop, for example, is the I'd buy that for $1 game show. Anytime I watch that movie, I'm looking for it in the background. And so I need the I'd buy that for $1 Cyberpunk game show, whatever that's going to be. I need that in my life.
So that's an interesting thing that you just kind of implicitly said there. There was something that was not in the foreground. The camera wasn't on it, but it was a repetitive element in the background that you could latch onto that made it feel real to you. This is definitely a corollary question, but if one of the things that matters to you a lot is the world feeling not gamified, feeling alive, what are some of the things that you might be looking out for that can hint to you that it might feel alive as you're playing it?
So I've been thinking a lot about this, and this is again going to bring it back to kind of a Spider-Man comparison, but I'll let you know something that like just kills me inside, right? So in
Derek, there's a lot of those things.
No, so like in the original Spider-Man for PS4, at this point, like we're far enough out, I think it's safe to talk about spoilers, but there's something that happens in the primary plot where the city is under like a bio attack, okay? And people are getting sick, and it's causing a lot of problems. And so throughout the course of the story in the city, to mirror that, they have people walking around with masks after the bio attack. Now, my 7-year-old son hasn't really connected that that's why they're wearing masks. So the other day, he's swinging around in the old Spider-Man because this was just before Miles Morales came out, and he wanted to play the old one to be ready for Miles.
Sure.
And he sees the people wearing masks, and he says, Dad, there was an update for the game, and people are wearing masks for coronavirus.
Oh, I love that. That's adorable.
And he's so
that's precious
about it. And I've been thinking about that because it's one of those things that's so like little, but my son connected with it, and it made it feel real to him because of a minor update. So what I want to see, even if it's on a set rotation, or, you know, if it's not going to be like DLCs later, if it's something that they've kind of ahead of time put in, what I want to see is seasonal changes to the city, right? Ooh. It'd be kind of nice if, you know, the city had its own run of seasons where sometimes it's snowy, sometimes it's not. And with those changes come changes in like the commercials. Like, it'd be kind of cool if when the snow starts falling, those fake commercials are like, you know, buy your new cybernetic implant. You know, like, imagine one of those cheesy BMW car commercials where like you buy your wife a car and she doesn't know about it somehow, which is just
but it's like for a cyberware thermoregulator.
But well, yeah, I was gonna say, like, imagine it's that, but instead it's like, I got you a brand new set of legs, honey, right? Like, I hated your old legs.
Wrapped up in a
shiny,
bow.
like gold-plated legs, and it's like a fake commercial for it, and it's totally like a knockoff, and it's cheesy, but like those play around the Christmas time for the city in the game. And then again, even if it's like stuff they've pre-programmed in, I just want like the Cyberpunk Halloween or whatever, or, you know, something that just makes the city feel like it's going through its own organic transformation in the background. So that would be, I think, a great way for them to make it feel less gamified, because I keep going back to that my son, he was just so excited. Dad, there was an update for Spider-Man and they have masks for coronavirus now, and that just kills me. And so I think the more games that can kind of latch onto that, again, it doesn't have to be real world references. Obviously, I hope that there's no COVID in 2077. I hope, but if you can do something like that in your game to make it feel like that world is evolving and responding to whatever it is that's going on in the world, you're going a long way in my book.
I like it. So if that's what you think would be cool to see in the future, what about the stuff we've already seen, right? We've seen all of the Night City wires. We've seen all of the stuff that's on that nightcity.love website. There's been a lot of marketing stuff, a lot of media already put out for the game ahead of its release. Is there anything that's been like particularly exciting for you? Any that you were really latched onto?
There's a lot of stuff that they debuted both from a technology standpoint and then just like content standpoint. I'm really excited to see what the music is like. I'm a little bummed that not all of the music is going to be like copyright friendly. So I'm hoping that when we turn on the streamer friendly version for creating our content, that we still get the majority of the music, because some of the stuff they've released already, I really like and I enjoy.
It was great.
And there's a lot of that I'm looking forward to. But the thing that I've spent the most time thinking about, what I keep coming back to, is the backgrounds. I'm still, right now, we're a couple of days away from release when we finally get to kickstart our game, and I'm unsure what I want to play first. I know I'm going to probably play through all of them, but I keep going back to, I want to play as a nomad that is very loyal. In my head, it's the Vin Diesel of Cyberpunk, right? Like, he's a nomad and it's all about family, and it's like the Fast and Furious nomad. Like, I want to do a playthrough where I kind of like role play that experience. I want to do the street kid that is, in a gang and trying to work his way up, who wants to become the next Scarface. I think that would be like a fun role playing experience. And then there's the part of me that really wants to do the corpo thing where you're like a mercenary who is not, I wouldn't even say like morally ambiguous, because his morals are actually going to be
incredibly clear.
But it's going to be entirely where the money goes. Like, I think the best example would be Bronn from Game of Thrones, where Bronn, you know exactly what he's going to do at any given point, and it's whatever the money points to. So I like the idea of like a corpo background character who lives that corporate life where he's doing wherever, whatever the money points him towards doing. So I want to do all of those, but I can't decide which one I want to do first. So I spent most of my time thinking about the backgrounds, and I'm curious how much of a difference it's going to make in your playthrough, because one of the things that The Witcher is very well known for is the choices that you make and how that changes the game as you play through it.
Even across games in some instances.
Right. So I keep coming back to that idea of, The Witcher, you always start as Geralt. So what is it going to be like when you can also have a different background to start? And what kind of experience, like, is it just going to, do we all have like a prologue quest line and it's just impacting that, or does it impact things long term? Like, I don't know. And that makes it that much harder. It's harder for me to make that decision because I feel like I'm going to miss out on something, even though I know I'm going to play through it every which way. Like, I just feel like I'm going to miss something cool by like hard locking one of my decisions in.
It's going to be, I feel like there's going to be a lot of moments where I know, I'm going to make a save here. I'm going to go play this. And then like 3 weeks from now, I'm going to come back to this save that I forgot about, make that other decision, and see what happens.
Yeah. I don't know. I keep coming back to that. I'm really excited about a bunch of the stuff that I've seen, though. I like that they have different kinds of cars for all different types of experiences, and that they very clearly put thought into, why does this car exist? Who manufactured it? Is this a luxury car or not? Blah, blah, blah. I really secretly hope that there's just like a multi-purpose, pickup truck style workhorse vehicle that the manufacturer named the Roach as like a nod.
Please,
I'm really
that would be
To
amazing.
a bunch of Easter eggs. That's actually, it's not one of the topics that I plan on talking about for this, but I would love to know what kind of Easter eggs you're looking for, whether it's like Blade Runner or Altered Carbon references, or is it Witcher references, or you know what I mean? There are so many potential
be
Easter
all of
eggs
them.
that could exist.
Oh yeah. So actually, one thing that I think is going to be really cool is, so I want to talk about the brain dream stuff because that's what excited me the most. But specifically, and regarding Easter eggs, I don't remember if it was the first, but one of the first ways I learned about Cyberpunk 2077 was a marketing thing where we saw, was it Ciri from The Witcher in like a cyberpunk world?
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that like way back in the day.
Yeah, there's talk about some potential cross reference there. I'll have to look it up, but I know exactly what you're talking about now.
So I'm expecting that to go absolutely nowhere. Like I don't think that's going to be a plot. I don't think it's going to be a side quest. Maybe there will be like an NPC model for, if it is Ciri, then Ciri. If it's not, then whoever. Sorry, I'm not a huge Witcher buff, but I expect there to at least be a nod to that. Like if I can count on anything, it's that there's going to be at least one Blade Runner reference and at least some sort of nod to when they made that character show up in a cyberpunk world before they had released any information about it.
So apparently Ciri is on the cover of some magazine in one of the video options.
Oh, there we go. Look at that.
So it says, if players choose the Corpo life path, this is an article from months ago, so I feel
that's
safe
the one I'm
reading
picking,
this,
by the way.
Right? I feel safe reading this. We're not revealing anything, right? But they choose the Corpo life path for their origin story. They work as a counterintelligence officer at Arasaka. And as part of this origin mission, players will be able to poke around V's office and go through her desk drawers. In one of the drawers, player can see a copy of a retro gaming magazine with The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt as its game of the month, and Ciri is on the cover.
That's great. I love that.
Stuff like that is kind of what I would expect, but again, there's so much inspiration in the genre to draw from that I know I'm going to be playing through it and I'm going to think like, hey, I saw something like this in, Blade Runner or Altered Carbon or whatever. Shadowrun is actually a great one to potentially reference as well. Obviously, for those of you who don't know, Cyberpunk 2077 is also based on a tabletop RPG.
Yep.
So I expect
it's a very long-standing game too. It's been around since like the 90s, I think, if not earlier. And actually, that's one of the things that I'm most excited about. If for anyone who doesn't know, if you didn't see, there was a Night City Wire where they introduced one of the gameplay elements called Brain Dream, which is where you can, for all intents and purposes, take a drug that gives you a first-person experience of someone else's memories. So, for instance, you could, in theory, if I recorded a brain dream of it, live my perspective of having filmed this podcast.
I thought I remembered that, so I need to correct you now before people bombard you. It's Brain Dance.
Brain Dance. Ah.
Yeah, I was like,
damn.
I swear that was Brain Dance, man.
No, you're right. It is Brain Dance now that I say it. I don't know where I got Brain Dream. Anyway, Brain Dance, thank you, is something that's really interesting to me because there are two things right off the bat that reminds me of. The first is there was an old, not that old, but like a handful of years ago, a game called Remember Me, which was a role-playing game where you played this female protagonist who, through various plot devices, reconstructs scenarios and memories and whatnot as the core gameplay mechanic. The selling point was what you're going to be doing is going around beating up baddies and then going into memories and reconstructing them so you could see what happened, and that will influence what you do going forward. So that was the first thing that I thought of when I saw Brain Dance. The second is in Shadowrun, at least the tabletop game that I played. I think it exists in the computer games as well, but I'm not sure. There's a thing called Beatles. BTLs stands for Better Than Life. It is the exact same concept. It's not really a drug in the game, but it's used like a drug and it's addictive like a drug. And it gives you a first-person seat to experiences people have recorded. Things like going down a roller coaster if you're a thrill seeker, but you have a fear of heights to help you get over fear of heights or just to have a thrill. A lot of more nefarious things, such as experience of being on a drug, like there's a lot of drugs. I'm not going to get into it, but you could be on the drug without having to actually take the drug. It's used a lot for prostitution and things like that. And so the idea that Cyberpunk 2077 is taking all of these concepts and ideas that have existed through a lot of other implementations of Cyberpunk games and Cyberpunk storytelling and Cyberpunk systems is really interesting to me. Cyberpunk as a genre has a whole lot of staple ingredients, kind of noir-y investigation stuff. Cyberware is a big one. Street samurais, street docs who do a lot of illicit and behind-the-scenes doctoring. There's a lot of main pillars of Cyberpunk that I'm sure are going to be in there. And I'm going to have a lot of personal fun and satisfaction kind of tying those connections between different showings of Cyberpunk, right? Like, yeah. How is 2077's Braindance different than Shadowrun's Beatles? How is 2077's Noir different than Altered Carbon's Noir? I think it's going to be really fun to draw those comparison points.
Yeah, I keep thinking about Altered Carbon when it comes to the Braindance mechanic, because you've got, both in the books for Altered Carbon, but also in the show, several instances where folks were in what they call a construct, right?
Yeah.
Because Altered Carbon is kind of at its core about digitizing you as a person and your experiences, and then you can manipulate that, and so you can be put into some sort of construct where either you control it, or in the case of, torture, imprisonment, etc., then it's instead meant to torture you. But then I also think about the other ways that you can utilize it, because in the show, at least, because Poe was not really a character in the books, even though I adore Poe in the show. That was a mouthful. He uses kind of like that construct to reconstruct somebody's psyche
as a therapy tool,
their memory, right? So again, like you, I'm curious to see how the Braindance is going to be used, because it could be something pretty benign. Like, let's be honest, there's an entire possibility that it is really just a storytelling tool that isn't fleshed out very much. Mm-hmm. What I keep thinking about is, it could be the heightened senses of The Witcher, where you have some missions or some stories where you get to a certain point, and then just like with heightened senses in The Witcher, it uses it uses the mechanic to put you on rails, right? In The Witcher, you use your senses to, like, follow tracks, and then, like, as you're going through, you get the characters narrating the experience, saying, like, they went through here and this happened, and you kind of get that storytelling that way. And it could be very much the same thing here, where you do a Braindance and it's you piecing things together, but it's really just there to kind of, like, narrate the experience. And like, that's fine. Like, I'm fine mm-hmm. with that, but obviously there's a big difference between that and using it as, like, a mini game or some sort of puzzle. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, but I think in the Night City Wire, where they showed it, they talked about, rewinding and fast forwarding and using it to find clues for solving crimes and mysteries and stuff. I don't know how developed out that is. It could be pretty rudimentary. It could be very in depth. We just don't know yet. But it's a mechanic that has a lot of implications, both for gameplay and for storytelling structure. So I think it's going to be really cool to see how it plays out.
Well, I think that's about it for topics for today. I'm looking at the time here. We're already getting close to the half-hour mark, so I think we should probably wrap up. This is, again, going to be our first show before the launch of the game, our only show before the launch of the game. The next one will be post-launch. So any closing thoughts? This is the last time that you can talk about any sort of hyper excitement you may have without being tainted by playing the actual game.
Okay, so, like, first of all, if we're just, like, dead fucking wrong about anything, don't chew our heads off. Like, okay, I already made one gigantic blunder, right? So there's probably more. So a grain of salt with all of this, but my hype is basically rooted in the fact that this is a genre that I love at a scale we haven't seen before, with promise of exploring really, really interesting story beats that I think have a lot of potentially profound implications, right? Like you're talking earlier about how Cyberpunk is one of the best ways to talk about transhuman things. I haven't had any like very personally satisfying stories that hit those beats in a very long time. They've been there before, but it's been a while. And I'm really, really looking forward to throwing myself into a non-competitive single player game that I can let myself be immersed in and just experience a bunch of stuff that I haven't gotten to feel in a long time. So that's kind of where my hype begins and ends, right? There's a lot there if you really want to break it down, but that's the overarching point is story beats I haven't seen in a long time at a scale in a genre that I love.
Oh man. What am I supposed to say now? You kind of took the show. I'm really looking forward to it for the exact same reasons. I want to dive into something not competitive because I feel like that was what my entire summer was esports related stuff, competitive. And so for the last month or two, I've really been just diving into storytelling and single player games again. And I'm looking forward to that. Really looking forward to the genre. As I said before, entirely possible that it just doesn't go deep enough. That's a real possibility, right?
Temper expectations,
fact,
folks.
I would almost say like I expect to be disappointed there, but that's just my own self-awareness simply because my expectations are so high. It really is one of my favorite genres, and even some of my favorite versions or stories of the cyberpunk genre have still fallen short, and they're my favorites, right? So I kind of expect to be disappointed in that regard, but I'm still looking forward to it. And if anything, at this point, like I'm just happy to put my hands on it. And I'm going to say this, I'll go on record and say this right now. It's entirely possible this game is a hot, buggy mess, and I'm still going to love it. And I'm going to love it because it's already been delayed so many times, and I just want to get in and poke around, and I'm willing to give it a pass because I want to get in and poke around.
The first game I truly loved was Fallout 3. Fallout 3. Do you remember how many bugs that piece of shit had?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Actually.
And it's going to be amazing. I don't even care.
It's actually funny because we talk about bugs, and the reason it's going to be a hot button issue for this one is just because of the delays, right? And the probably, rightful criticism related to crunch, because we want studios to stop crunching, right? We want people to be treated like human beings. But the reality is that some of the most beloved games of all time have been buggy messes. Skyrim is one of the best reviewed games of all time. You can buy it on every platform. I'm pretty sure I can play it on my microwave at this point. And I know people who just this week booted it up and started another playthrough. Like, it just has that level of fandom and love. And it had dragons flying backwards at launch and all sorts of crazy stuff, right? Witcher 3. We love The Witcher 3. Everybody talks so highly about the polish and the beauty. But at the end of the day, we also all know that Roach will show up on the roof of a house. Or, there's videos of Roach doing push-ups, or you name it, whatever. So, like, I expect the game to be buggy, and I know that there's going to be, the folks who like to be contrarians, and they're going to throw that criticism, but it's not going to ruin my enjoyment. Unless it's literally unplayable, like where it just crashes and I can't get it to load. I'm sure I'm going to get in and have a blast, and I'll worry about the criticism stuff later, because I'm going to be, a fan first. So,
yeah. Hey, Derek, you know who else I'm a fan of? Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, I think we both are. That timeless, unaging icon. And I know that we could do like an entire show about just him and his involvement in a project like this, because it's kind of...
Yeah, we'll have to have the breathtaking episode.
Yeah, breathtaking is one way to put it for sure. But I you know, I love you all. I appreciate everybody who did make it this far, as we were saying before, and we are big fans of you. And I believe that we should probably tell people to subscribe, right? Hopefully, like it.
Yeah. If you liked listening to us, if you could like the video, that'd mean a lot to us. That'd be real cool.
Retweet it, follow us on socials, do that thing. I'm so bad at self-marketing. Like,
Here, let me tag in. Let me tag in. Okay. Ready?
Here we go.
If you've made it this far, thank you so much for lasting with us throughout this whole rambling journey. It's been a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it too. If you did, please like the video. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss them in the future. And if you could share this out so we can get a little buzz going around here, that'd be awesome. We're really looking forward to growing this show. And if you could help us out, that would mean the world to us. You can find us both on Twitter. We have our own YouTube channels. I don't know which one this is going on, but there's another one, probably. And you can find us on Discord if you really need us. Did I miss anything? I think I hit it all.
Send smoke signals to tell us that you like it. Skyrate it.
We don't have any PO boxes yet.
No. Nobody wants to send us anything other than hate mail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you have hate mail, we'll take that too, because there's nothing like bad press to drum up some controversy to get you popular. Good night, folks.